The wind was screaming like it wanted inside. Snow slammed against my cabin walls, hard enough to shake the beams. The lantern on my table flickered, throwing long shadows that crawled across the logs. Nights like this, no sane soul traveled. Not man, not beast. Then I heard it. A knock. Not loud, not human. Low, slow, uneven. I froze with my hand around my coffee tin. The sound came again. Thud. Pause. Thud. Too close to the ground. Too deliberate to be the wind. No one comes out in this, I muttered to myself. I reached for my rifle and stepped toward the door. The hinges groaned as I pulled it open. Snow rushed in, sharp and biting. The storm swallowed the world whole. That's when I saw them. 3 donkeys stood in the drifts, legs shaking, heads bowed. Ice clung to their fur like armor. Their breath came out thin and white, each one fighting to stay upright. They hadn't wandered here. They'd been sent. I stepped closer. My boots sank deep into the snow. That's when I saw the saddlebags. Dark stains. Frozen stiff. Blood. My stomach tightened. Easy now, I said, though my voice shook. The donkeys didn't move. They just stood there patient, waiting, like they'd already finished their duty. I cut the first strap with my knife. The leather snapped free. Something inside the bag shifted. I heard it then. A sound. Not wind. Not animal. A breath. My heart slammed against my ribs. I dropped to my knees and tore the flap open. Inside was a human hand. Pale. Blue at the fingers. Still warm. I ripped the bag wider. A face stared back at me. Eyes half open. Lips cracked. Alive, but barely. I staggered back, my mind racing. This wasn't charity. This wasn't chance. Someone had packed living people like cargo and sent them through a blizzard to my door. That kind of message only meant one thing. Trouble was already here, and it knew exactly where I lived. What would you have done? Shut the door, or step into the storm with them? I pulled the donkeys into the barn first. Their legs shook. Ice clung to their hides. They didn't fight me. They just stood there, breathing steam, eyes dull with exhaustion. I shut the barn doors hard, slid the beam into place, then grabbed the saddlebags. They were heavier than they should have been. Inside the cabin, I locked the door. Once. Then again. The wind clawed at the walls, like it knew something had changed. I set the bags near the fire and cut the straps. The first bag opened with a low groan. A woman spilled out onto the floor. Blood soaked her sleeve. Her eyes snapped open, sharp despite the pain. She reached for a pistol before I could speak. Easy, I said. I ain't touching you. She didn't lower the gun. Where are we? My cabin. Who sent you? No one. She watched my face like she was reading a lie written there. The second bag moved on its own. I opened it slower. A boy crawled out, thin as a fence rail, eyes dark and empty. He didn't speak. He just stared at the door, then at my rifle on the wall. His hand never left the knife at his belt. The third bag. I almost didn't open. It smelled wrong. An old man lay inside, chest barely rising. His lips were blue. I dragged him closer to the fire, wrapped him in a blanket. He won't last, the woman said. He might, I replied, if he wants to. She snorted. Wanting ain't enough out here. No one sat. No one relaxed. The fire popped between us like it knew better than to burn steady. The woman kept her gun. The boy stayed standing. I kept my hands open where they could see them. Silence stretched. Finally I said, "You came a long way on 3 donkeys." They were quiet, the woman answered. Men aren't. That told me plenty. I poured water, set bread on the table. No one touched it. "You gonna sell us?" she asked. "No. You swear." "I don't swear," I said. "I decide." She studied the room, the walls, the single window, the door I hadn't unlocked. "This place," she said slowly, "is either shelter or a grave." "That depends," I said, "on who's asking." The boy's eyes flicked to mine. Just once. There was fear there. And something worse, expectation. Outside, the wind howled. Somewhere far off, I thought I heard hoofbeats. Or maybe that was just my blood remembering old trouble. I locked the door again anyway. That cabin wasn't a home anymore. It was a line in the sand. The fire settled into a low, steady glow. Flames licked the iron stove and threw long shadows across the cabin walls. Outside, the wind still howled, but it no longer felt like a threat. Inside, the air smelled of broth, smoke, and wet wool. I ladled soup into tin cups and set them down slow, careful not to startle anyone. No one spoke at first. The wounded woman held her cup with both hands, like it might disappear if she let go. The old man stared into the fire, eyes glassy, jaw tight. The boy sat apart, knees pulled to his chest, face half hidden under his hat. He hadn't said a word since I cut him free from the saddlebag. I broke the silence. "You crossed half the mountains in a storm," I said. "Nobody does that by accident." The woman swallowed, then nodded. We didn't have a choice. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. I waited. Silence does more work than questions out here. She finally spoke again. The camp wasn't a camp anymore. It was a cage. The old man coughed, sharp and dry. "Belonged to Harlan Crow," he muttered. "Everything did." That name landed heavy. Crow owned land, mines, deputies, judges, whatever he wanted. A man didn't need to wear a badge if he owned the law. What happened? I asked. The woman stared into her soup. "My boy happened." Her voice cracked. She didn't cry. That told me enough. "Crow took him," she went on. "Said I owed money. Said work wasn't enough anymore. I begged. I paid. I begged again." She looked up at me then. "They buried him by the slag heap. Wouldn't even let me see." The fire popped. The boy flinched. I shifted my gaze to him. "You don't have to talk," I said. "But you're safe here." He didn't answer, just stared at the floor. The old man leaned forward, joints creaking. He saw the hanging. He said quietly, "3 men. Rope snapped one of them wrong. Took near a minute." The boy's jaw clenched. Still no words. I felt my hands curl into fists. "And the donkeys." The woman let out a humorless breath. "No riders could leave. Roads watched. Riders questioned. Riders disappeared." She paused. "Animals don't raise suspicion." "Smart," I said. "Desperate," she corrected. The old man reached inside his coat. The boy stiffened. I watched his hands closely. Instead of a gun, he pulled out folded papers. Thick, greasy, handwritten. "Ledgers," he said. "Names, payments, bodies, dates." I didn't touch them yet. "Proof?" I asked. He nodded once. "Proof Crow buried men deeper than ore. Proof he paid the law to look away." The woman added, "That's why he sent riders after us. Not for us. For those pages." The boy finally spoke. His voice was low, flat. "They killed my father." The room went quiet again. I looked at each of them, really looked. Broken people. Still standing. Still breathing. "What would you have done?" I asked softly. "Stayed. Or run?" No one answered. They didn't need to. I took the papers at last, feeling their weight. "You crossed hell to get here," I said. "Means hell's coming too." The woman met my eyes. "We know." The fire burned lower. Outside, the wind eased. And in that stillness, something settled between us. Not trust. Not yet. But understanding. And sometimes, on the frontier, that's how family begins. Dawn came slow and gray, like it didn't want to be seen. I was already awake. The fire had burned low. The cabin smelled of smoke, sweat, and fear. Then I heard it, hoofbeats. Not rushing. Not careless. Circling. I stepped to the window and pulled the curtain back an inch. Riders moved through the fog on the ridge. 5 of them. Maybe more. Rifles across saddles. Faces hidden by hats and scarves. They weren't lost. They were waiting. Behind me, the woman whispered, "They found us." Her voice shook. The boy stiffened. The old man coughed, sharp and wet. I opened the door, just enough to see. Cold air rushed in. One rider broke from the line and rode closer, slow as a threat. He stopped at my fence. The fog wrapped around him like a ghost. Then the shot came. The bullet tore through a fence post, splinters flying. The sound cracked the morning open. The donkeys screamed from the ravine. Inside the cabin, someone cried out. A voice carried through the fog. "Come. Certain. You're holding what's ours," the rider said. Another pause. "We don't want trouble. We want our property." I stepped forward, boots in the mud, rifle low but ready. "They're not property," I said. My voice surprised me. "Steady. Hard." The rider laughed once. "Everyone belongs to someone, mountain man." Silence followed. Heavy. Dangerous. Inside, panic broke loose. "They'll kill us," the woman whispered. "They always do," the old man said. The boy finally spoke, barely a breath. "Please, don't give us back." I closed my eyes for half a second. I saw the quiet life I could keep. The woodpile. The snow. No trouble. No graves. Then I saw the saddlebags again. Blood. Fear. Truth. I raised my rifle. Not at them, but high enough they could see. "You cross that fence," I said, "and you won't leave standing." The rider stared at me a long moment. Then he tipped his hat. "This ain't over," he said. The hoofbeats faded, but the threat stayed. That cabin was no bargain. It was a line in the dirt. What would you have done? I made the choice before anyone asked me to speak it. We were not running. We were not begging. We were staying. I looked around the cabin, at the cracked walls and smoke-dark beams. It had kept me alive for years, but now it had to become something else. A shield. A promise. A line no one crossed without paying for it. "Windows first," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. No one argued. Boards came down from the rafters. Nails rang sharp against iron. Each strike echoed like a countdown. The wounded woman held the lantern high, her hands still shaking, but her eyes focused. The boy dragged planks across the floor without a word, his jaw tight, learning how to be useful without being told. I cleaned my rifle slow and careful. Every piece mattered. Oil, cloth, steel. I checked the chamber twice. Out here, mistakes didn't forgive you. Outside, the wind shifted. Snow blew low across the ground like crawling smoke. We moved the donkeys at dusk. I led them by rope through the trees, down into a narrow ravine hidden from any road or ridge. They went quiet, as if they understood the danger better than we did. I cut the straps from their backs and rubbed warmth into their necks. "You carried enough," I told them. "You rest now." When I came back, the cabin looked different. Smaller, tighter, ready. We set traps where the ground dipped near the tree line. Nothing fancy, just things meant to slow a man down, make him think twice, make him bleed if he rushed. Inside, rolls began to form without orders. The boy took the high window, watching the ridge through a narrow crack. His eyes were sharp, too sharp for someone his age. The old man stayed by the fire, hand steady as he loaded cartridges, one after another, never wasting motion. The woman moved between us all, checking bandages, tightening knots, keeping the fear from settling too deep. In the quiet moments, we talked. Names came out slow, like they hurt to give away. Pieces of the past slipped free between tasks. No long speeches, just enough truth to know who stood beside you. I bound the woman's arm where blood had soaked through. She didn't flinch. "Why help us?" she asked. I tied the knot firm. "Because someone should have helped you before." She nodded once. That was enough. The fire burned low. Shadows stretched tall across the walls. Outside, the night listened. That cabin was no longer just shelter. It was a promise we made to each other. It was a stand. I checked the door one last time. Barred. Solid. Whatever came for us would find more than frightened people inside. They would find a family that chose to fight. And out on the prairie, the wind carried the decision into the dark. The sky turned the color of old iron when they came. I stood at the cabin window and watched riders fan out across the slope, coats snapping in the wind, rifles laid easy across saddles. The antagonist rode at their center, straight-backed, unhurried, like the land already belonged to him. Smoke from our chimney drifted low and nervous, pressed flat by the weather. I felt the cabin breathe around us, boards creaking, nails whining, like it knew what was coming. "Count them," the wounded woman whispered. "Enough," I said. More than enough. A shot cracked, would burst beside my head. Another tore through the door, burying itself in the wall. I shoved everyone down. Positions, I said, calm because calm was all I had. The boy slid to the back window, eyes hard, hands steady. The old man pressed the papers to his chest, lips moving without sound. Outside, the hired guns shouted for us to come out. The antagonist's voice cut through them, clean and cold. Bring what you stole. Walk away breathing. I fired once, not to hit, but to answer. The siege began. Gun smoke filled the cabin, sharp and bitter. Bullets punched holes in the walls, daylight blinking through like angry eyes. We moved in rhythm, load, fire, duck, until time lost its edges. A man fell from his horse, hit clean. Another crawled, then stopped. Snow churned to mud under boots and blood. The donkeys brayed from the ravine, distant and frantic, like witnesses who couldn't look away. Between volleys, I grabbed the papers. Now, I said. The old man's voice carried when he read, thin but steady. Names, dates, a ledger of thefts and killings. Land stolen with forged marks. Graves dug where no one would search. Each word cut deeper than a bullet. The hired guns faltered. One shouted, "That's a lie." Another didn't fire at all. The antagonist laughed. He always laughed when truth showed its teeth. "Paper burns," he said. "Men die." I stepped onto the porch with the pages raised. Snow stung my face. "These don't burn easy," I said. "They've crossed storms and silence to stand here." I looked from rider to rider. "What would you have done?" I asked them, and you listening. Would you die for his lies? A rifle boomed. The railing splintered. I fell back, dragged inside by the woman, breath knocked loose. "Finish it," she said, fierce through pain. "End it." The final rush came like a wave. They charged, shouting. Fear turned loud. We answered with everything left. The boy dropped one at the door. I met another at arm's length. Smoke and sweat and snow blurring into one ugly breath. Wood cracked. Glass screamed. Then it was quiet enough to hear the wind again. The antagonist stood alone in the yard, coat dark with melt, pistol low. He looked smaller without his men. "You can't win," he said, tired now. I walked down the steps. Each board felt like a promise. "This isn't winning," I said. "It's ending." He raised the gun. I was faster. When he fell, the land seemed to exhale. Rain began, soft at first, then steady, turning powder to paste, washing red to brown. We stood there until the rain finished what it started. The papers were safe. The cabin still stood. Justice, frontier style, had taken its due. And in the quiet after, I wondered again, what would you have done when the frontier came to collect? The storm did not end with thunder. It ended with rain. Soft at first, then steady. It fell on gun smoke still hanging in the air. It ran over blood-dark snow and carried it into the dirt. The mountain breathed again. I stood in the doorway of the cabin, rifle hanging low. My hands shook now that the noise was gone. The survivors stepped out behind me, slow and careful, as if the world might still bite. No one spoke at first. We listened to rain on broken boards. We watched steam rise from the ground where men had fallen. The violence was over. What remained had to be enough. The donkeys wandered back on their own. No saddlebags, no ropes. They lowered their heads and grazed like nothing had happened. Quiet, steady, alive. They had carried pain across the mountains. Now they carried nothing. The cabin leaned, scarred and shot through, but it still stood. Like us. The wounded breathed easier. The boy finally spoke a word. The old man cried without hiding it. I looked at the rain and felt something loosen inside me. Justice had come, not clean, not gentle, but final. What survives after violence is never pride. It is life, and the choice to keep going. I still see that dawn when I close my eyes. The prairie lay quiet at last. Smoke drifted low. Ropes hung cut and useless in the mud. Out here, justice never came wearing a badge. It came on tired backs, on frozen hooves, on people who chose to stand when it was safer to turn away. Those donkeys never fired a shot. They never spoke a word. Yet they carried truth through the storm when no man would. Survival does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it knocks softly at your door and waits. So I ask you this: what would you have done that night? If this story stayed with you, leave a word below. Ride with us again. Subscribe, share the trail, and remember those who carried the truth through the cold.